Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to Season 5 and episode number 803 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Excuse me, I just need to clear my throat. There you go. Thank you. Today, recording day is Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025, and it is definitely a great day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me this morning is our good friend, Mr. Grizzly, but he did put up part 2 of his initial daily Grizzly growl yesterday, so please make sure that you take time to go and check that out. Let's see. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and Cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing well. I'm overall very, very good. Couple of little bumpy parts over the past couple of days. Nothing major. Just a couple little bumpy parts, you're having a good day and then something every now and then comes along and makes you go somewhere in the middle of the good day. So yeah, I've had one or two of those. But ultimately good. Rejoining my regularly scheduled life after my glamorous showbiz life has come to a pause for a little bit. I did not go to that other audition the other evening, because my Beaver Sweetie and I had discussed possibly taking a vacation that would coincide with both. We still have not booked anything, so hopefully we will. And it's actually really weird because I'm the one that asked for the vacation, I guess, this time around, which I normally do. I'm not a sun destination person at all. But as I mentioned yesterday, there is one place I do like to go to if I'm going to go get some sun in the winter. And, it's a nice, relaxed place. And, you can do as little or as much as you want, and you can actually just be yourself, particularly if you're gay. So it's a place I like to go to. And I think we had talked about it in July that if we were going to go this year, that we should start looking sometime in November. And then when the shows run, on the day the show's run was closing on the 30th, it sort of dawned on me. It's like, yeah, if we're going to do that, we should probably look, hey, because it's the end of November. So we started looking, and we're having trouble with finding accommodations. The airline tickets are always easy to find if you're willing to pay the price. So yeah, we're trying to finalize that. It would be in February if we went. It would be my first vacation in 6 years. And when I say vacation, I mean like out of the country, going someplace for the specific purpose of, disconnecting and all that kind of stuff. We've had a couple of little mini vacations here in Canada. We've gone Lake Huron for 10 days a couple of years ago, and little side trips, trips to Stratford and all that kind of stuff, but an actual vacation, several weeks, and just disconnecting somewhere else. Haven't had one. So, and I guess I'm due because I've mentioned it twice. So, um, so yeah, we are still working on that. So yeah, a couple of speed bumps along the way, uh, involved having to uh, wanting to have a heart-to-heart conversation a couple times about how you're feeling about things, and I'm usually the person. It's really weird because I share a lot here, but it takes me a while to get to the point that I want to share. Most times, I just go into my den and lick my wounds and ponder and think, but don't talk all that much about what it is that I'm feeling. So I process things myself, and then I move on. But I am every now and then you have to talk because you need to let somebody else know because you need something from someone else. My beaver sweetie is very good at pulling things out of me when I don't want to talk. So we had to share a couple of things, and clear the air a little bit. Uh, Nothing aggressive or sort of nothing terrible, just uh, a general confusion about things, or sometimes just not knowing where to put your foot next, and looking for a little guidance or looking for a little, um, are you with me on this type thing? Are we still on the same wavelength on this type of thing, or what wavelength are you on? Because it may be not even are you still on the same wavelength. I just don't know what wavelength they're on. So you need to communicate. You need to communicate. But happy to report that it was an absolutely fruitful conversation, and they usually are with my beaver sweetie. I mean, that's why we're together 13 years, right? We can talk about these things, even though sometimes he needs to drag it out of me. He gets me out of my ruts. And that's one of the things I love about him. So, yeah, we were able to share some stuff and clear some air and move forward. So that took a little bit of a weight off as well, because you can ruminate if you don't. Sometimes if you don't speak up, and that's never good because you always end up in the same spot. Usually when you ruminate, and it's not a good spot. That's why you're ruminating, right? So yeah, overall feeling well. Haven't had post-event drop yet from the play. I'm assuming that will probably happen tomorrow when we're Thursday, and I'm not going in for another week of shows. Then I'll probably start really missing people. But I'm still in communication online with a lot of people, and there's still a lot of the cast that are still buzzing from the experience. So that's pretty good. But one or two are starting to mention now, so I'm starting to feel a little down, and it's like, yep, that's normal. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with you. That's completely normal when you had a great experience and it comes to an end, or you've had a great vacation, or you go to a great concert or something. You've taken a couple of days vacation to do it, and you come back and you had a really great time. It was fantastic. There's sometimes something called a post-event drop, where you feel sad or a little low a couple of days after. Because you just had such a wonderful experience, and you're grateful for the experience, but it has come to an end and you're back to your regular life, and regular life isn't as exciting as that experience, and there's a little bit of a drop. A lot of people worry about that or wonder if there's something wrong with them. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. That's perfectly normal. That's just human. It happens. Um, yeah, no post-event drop yet. So feeling good about that. And still a little tired. I have to admit, it's one of the reasons I'm late today. I don't have any excuses. There's no tech thing. There's no nothing. I was just tired and went to bed earlier last night before having planned or prepared a full show. So I had to do the rest this morning, and I needed a little more time. So I thank you for your patience. Um, Other than that, I am feeling really good, however. Um, Energy is coming back. I'm less and less fatigued with every uh, next day. Playing curling again, gone back. I haven't stopped, but back to my regular schedule where I don't have to miss any games. One on Monday. I played like a superstar. We lost yesterday, just barely. My men's Tuesday night team haven't won a game yet this season. But then again, we've only played with the full team twice this season. Everybody's needed a night off or has been on vacation somewhere or something. So we haven't actually had many games together as a full team yet this season. Uh, and I had a mixed game yesterday. The first four ends was not playing all that well. Uh, I had some shots that worked out, but others that didn't really, and they didn't cause like devastation or anything. But it's just it wasn't working. I wasn't. I was just off by, you know, a couple of inches here and there, and then somewhere along the way, it just kicked in, and I started playing like a rock star again, which was able to bring our team back into a situation where we were able to get tied in the last end, and then the last end twice we had the winning rock in the rings, and the other team did this super amazing, double raise takeout type thing to get us out twice in the same end. So I guess they deserve to win. But it was like, we were so close. Uh, yeah, uh, back to the regular stuff and feeling good about it. And hopefully, like I said, the vacation will pan through and we'll be able to book all of that kind of stuff. So I will not have missed this audition for no reason. And yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to having those 20 hours a week back, so I can be more rested and have more time to have the shows prepared the evening before, so that I can start at a more regular time. Um, More consistently because I've read the comments over the past few weeks, and I know that there are some members of the Dam Fam who would appreciate a more consistent start time, and I will do my best to try to provide that in the coming weeks as I get back to my regular schedule and regularly scheduled life. But I do thank you for your patience and indulgence while I have been pursuing this project, this passion project of mine, and I'm glad for all of your support. And um, don't have another one planned at the moment, but when I do, I will let you know. And I will probably be begging for your indulgence and patience again at that point. All right, kits and cubs, let's get into the stories of the day. I see that there's lots of good conversation here in the chat that has already started. Although I am concerned about Kit Lorry because I'm seeing something about an assault. I am hoping that there wasn't anything too grave and that you are okay overall, especially um, mentally and emotionally. Physically, of course, goes without saying, but sometimes in those situations, the effects are more than just physical. See here that you're getting a restraining order today. That's good. Assert your legal rights. Absolutely do. Absolutely. Wow. I am sorry to learn of that, and I am sending you all my love and comfort. I'm taking you in my arms and giving you a very, very, very big hug. And yes, Saucy, I'm right with you. Well, now I'm angry that I can't protect Lori. I agree. I agree. Uh, I'm not sure if you were a listener, Lori, at the time that it happened to us, but a couple of years ago, we weren't physically assaulted. But as we were walking home, a neighbor with whom we thought we had good relations just suddenly, out of the blue, decided to hurl the F word at us both. Um, that did not end up working well for him. by the way. Uh, I got very, very, very assertive when that happened, and uh, made very clear that that type of language was extremely unacceptable. And then I too called the cops to file a hate crime um, report. So yeah, fortunately, in our case, it ended well because we let the police officers know that we were willing to consider this a blip, that he was having a bad day, and that we would be happy to go back to the type of relationship that we had before this incident if he was willing to be neighborly. And turns out that seems that he was very, very, very embarrassed that he had gone there and had let that slip, and had actually agreed to that. And our relations are back to where they were before that. But yes, we had to stand up and put our foot down and say, no, that is unacceptable. We will not be treated like that, especially in our own neighborhood and our own street. And we are not prepared to start walking around the block to avoid passing in front of your house for fear that you are going to come out and yell that stuff at us again. So, yeah, you're going to get a little visit from the police. And we're going to have a little conversation about what it is that you said and whether or not you think that you would like to keep on saying those things in the future. And fortunately, like I said, he had been embarrassed and indeed was having a bad day, and we were able to resolve that amiably and amicably. But uh, yeah, I was shaken when that happened. So if you got to a point where there was actually a laying of hands of some kind, that is uh, that can send one reeling very quickly, and things can escalate in a not so great manner very quickly as well. So I'm hoping that there was no escalation after this, and that you are uh, okay. Like I said, sending you all my love, Kit Lori. Um, and like I said, there's often a rush of adrenaline after that stays with you and that gets stored in the body for a while when something like that happens. Again, that is completely normal. When that starts to dissipate, you'll probably really feel it in your body. That is also completely normal. Um, so just be kind to and gentle with yourself, as we say on the show, over the next while. And know that a lot of things that you might be feeling or experiencing, even though they might seem a little wild and um, uh, particularly, um, oh my God, present at any given time, that these are not abnormal feelings and that you're not having any feeling that any normal person would not be having in the exact same circumstances. So just try to be, like I said, be kind to and gentle with yourself as you're going through this process, because um, that's not fun in any way, shape, or form. All right, kids and cubs. Um, wow, I'm yeah, was just going through the comments, turned my eye there and saw that and was like, "Oh my word. Sorry, kids and cubs, I have to sneeze now." And of course, as soon as I said it, the sneeze left me. But I still have a tickling in my nose. All right, let's get into some of the subjects that we are going to talk about today. Um, oh, sorry, I'm seeing here Kid Donna asking me, what role were you playing in Guys and Dolls? I was in the male ensemble playing one of the crap shooters. So there you go. To answer your question. Wow, you guys have been talking a lot today. I'm still not caught up on all the chats that you've done since that you've made since this has started. Here I see Kit Lori saying, "Yes, I'm okay. Yes, it was rather shocking. Okay, I'm glad that you are okay." Yeah, I can imagine that it would trigger a PTSD episode. Wow, jeez. Okay. Now I think I'm caught up now. Okay. So Today on the show, there is various news, but the big news is the prime minister stopping in at the meeting of the annual meeting of the Assembly of First Nations. There's a 2-day meeting going on, and uh, in the context of everything that's been happening in terms of major projects, Bill C5, the 3 meetings that he had with each of the groups, one with each of the groups, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, um, to resolve issues following C5 because, well, the people weren't quite pleased with the way that that went down in terms of that piece of legislation and the lack of consultation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people during that time. Then we remember there was a minister of federal and provincial and territorial leaders, in which I think it was Premier Wab Kinew had suggested to everyone that and I believe the Métis were meeting with people there specifically in that context too, and that Premier Wab Kinew had made the comment that there should probably be similar type meeting, but with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and there seemed to be agreement around the table for that to happen, and that you want to keep in mind because there's been some progress on that front too, at least as announced by the Prime Minister. Um, but we've had all these contexts in the time since Mark Carney's become prime minister, leading up to this, and then recently, of course, we had the announcement of the MOU. We had the first 2 series of projects listed with the Major Projects Office, and a lot of them do have Indigenous ownership and participation in that type of stuff. And then we have the MOU with Alberta on the pipeline, in which Indigenous people were not consulted for that portion of it. It seems that they're going to be consulted henceforth going forward. But they weren't consulted for that portion, and that, of course, raised a lot of fears. And then we had, unfortunately, um, the Prime Minister's Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Tim Hodgson, show up on Power and Politics. And when asked about consultation, flippantly, rather flippantly, giving the comment that, there's Zoom, as if um, meetings with members of another nation about um, infrastructure uh, crossing their community or encroaching on their land that could create a situation after it is built in which there could be a tanker spill of oil in very treacherous waters and waters that are important to one's livelihood. And um, uh, maybe not the systems in place to ensure that things are able to be cleaned up if things are able to be cleaned up. Um, there's a lot going on at the moment. If you're, and that's on top of everything else, the regular files that are affecting you if you're a member of the Indigenous community in this particular instance, First Nations communities, because we are talking about the AFN. Um, so this meeting is particularly timely, and the Prime Minister had attended in order to address members of the Assembly of First Nations. And considering the timing of the MOU, this is probably a smart thing to do. Um, and uh, there's a dynamic that's going on that what the Prime Minister is saying with regard to involvement of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and communities with these major projects, uh, and with Bill C-5 and all that type of stuff. Uh, what he says about it, the problem is that what he's saying about them are not written down on paper in these agreements. Um, so when you're out there saying these projects will not go through without First Nations participation, but you are not willing to put down on paper that there must be free, prior, uh, and informed consent before this project to go forward. So if you're in your talking, you're always mentioning free, prior, and informed consent, but down on paper, on the legal part, you're never putting those words down. That creates some confusion and dissonance, and this seems to be the case, and the source of some fear and trepidation from First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities is that, like I said, these big promises um, that how do you put it? It's like the government's trying to walk the fine line to not say that either the province of British Columbia has a veto, which it doesn't. That has been resolved at the Supreme Court, but it's different with First Nations, Inuit, Métis communities because they're listed in the Constitution. Um, in each of the three designated groups have their own specific section or portion of the Constitution that deals with their relationship specifically with the Crown, because all three of the relationships are slightly different, with the Inuit having the most modern treaty agreements with the Crown. As opposed to other groups, for example, and we noticed that in the three different consultations, how things were much smoother with the Inuit communities than with the First Nations communities because there were different structures and legally there were things that the government was bound to do with regard to partnership and consultation because these treaties were signed much later when we knew more and had developed better practices already. Um, so we're in a situation that uh, the federal government uh, appears not want to put down on paper or say explicitly that um, these communities have vetoes over the project while trying to reassure these people that nothing will happen on their land without their consent, which would be a veto de facto or de jure, depending on how you classify it, but which would be a veto. Um, and I guess they're trying to say that they're not the federal government is not ceding its authority in order to impose the pipeline uh, against the wishes of indigenous communities, um, but really doesn't want to proceed in that manner, but doesn't want to give up that right in case it absolutely needs it. And therefore, that prevents them from putting that down on paper. And when you can't full throatedly say, no, this will absolutely not happen. If you do not agree, we guarantee you this, which the federal government is not prepared to do. Um, well, that makes people nervous. It makes people nervous. So there is some interesting diplomacy going on here with regard to ensuring that you're not saying different things to different groups or giving different groups different messages. Um, but it's no matter how much the prime minister is personally committed to this, if we assume that he is not willing to go that far on paper as he is in word when he is acknowledging these realities. And like I said, that will tend to make people nervous. Of course, this is a matter of trust. Um, trust is very hard to come by between Indigenous communities and the federal government. So there's also that. Um, we also have this happening against the backdrop of the Prime Minister recently having committed to the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May, that meeting the 2030 climate targets, GHG reduction targets, which are enshrined in law, as Miss May keeps reminding us, um, after promising her it would happen, coming around a couple of days later and signing a pipeline MOU, does not inspire the most confidence, and it seems that he has lost her confidence. She's on the record having stated that now that clearly she had made a mistake uh, in trusting Mark Carney on this file. Um, which, again, if you're then going into a community and talking about, well, we need to trust, and well, um, a lot of people don't only look at how you treat them, they look at how you treat others. And uh, they will base how much trust they can place in you based on how much trust, uh, how they see you handle the trust of others. Let's put it that way. So for Mark Carney to promise this to Elizabeth May and then come back a couple of days later and then sign the oil pipeline MOU, and I'm pretty sure he knew he was going to sign that pipeline MOU when he made that deal with Elizabeth May. And I'm not sure how he's going to plan to reach both, meet those 2030 targets at the same time while pursuing this pipeline project. Now, of course, he points to the pathways thing. If it goes ahead, the pathways thing will be able to, um, you know, capture the carbon at the point of production, and then, of course, what happens with that is that that carbon is then turned into a liquid form, liquid CO2, which can then be used again to help extend the life of those oil wells because it can be used to help extract additional oil from it. Um, Now, from what I've been understanding, it would seem that should these, um, how would I put it? There's been a lot of criticism of carbon capture and storage, utilization and storage projects, but there are some, as in all things, there are better quality ones, and apparently there are some good ones. And there is one in Saskatchewan at the moment that is constructed in such a way that it does capture a significant amount of the carbon at production. Um, and it would probably be that type of model we would be using. So a more proven model for this type of thing. Um, but it would seem that one of the problems with it is that um, uh, if there's no incentive for the companies to collect the carbon in order to be able to put it through that process. And one of the things that would make it worth their while is that industrial price on carbon, which right now seems to be at an effective rate of about $25. I think it is a megaton, if I'm not mistaken. And that this one would be, basically the price of this would increase sixfold over the next few years. I don't know what period of time to get to an effective rate of about $130 dollars per megaton, which is significant, a significant change. Um, some of the things that I'm reading would say that in order to be able to reach our, I think it's to reach our targets by using industrial carbon price alone, it would have to be close to about 400, the effective rate. So that's not, we're not going there. Um, but still, a sixfold increase over what we have now starts to create an incentive structure for companies to have to do something with the carbon then um, rather than just letting it go into the air and taking that penalty. So with that, again, that incentive structure, if there and that project being built, there's no reason to suspect, from what I'm hearing, that that project would be built only to handle CO2 from the extra million to 1.3 million barrels of oil that Daniel Smith would like to produce, but that the oil sector that already exists could, since that Pathways project would exist when it is built, they could put their stuff through that as well. So the project could end up decarbonizing, for lack of a better word, and I really don't like this word, but let's say decarbonizing the extraction process uh, for not only the new capacity, but for existing capacity as well, which would definitely have a very important GHG reduction effect if it was expanded. Once it existed, could be expanded to cover more production than just the new production for the new pipeline. So there's that, and it would seem that in that case, maybe the liquid CO2 that would be created then would be a product that is somewhat marketable, because it seems that the other thing is that if you're collecting, if you're putting all the money to collect the CO2 and it passes through the pathways thing for being stored, but nothing can happen with it, well, then there's no product to sell as well. So that's why they have to create that market with the industrial carbon price, because if there's no cost to the pollution, and by saving the pollution, you cannot create a new product that can be sold. Then what's what's the financial incentive for a company to do this, to take on all this extra cost? There isn't any. So creating that carbon price, there's going to be a price for emitting this pollution, does create a thing. You want to avoid this cost by doing this other thing. So it creates that type of structure. And then if you can generate liquid CO2 that can either be sold back or given back as a cost reduction measure to produce more stuff, and or as a way to extend the life of oil wells, which could maybe mean less costs needed for drilling, then at that point it becomes a little bit more financially interesting for the companies to participate in this type of project. So you have all of that going on uh, with regard to that type of project here. Um, and I think I threw myself off with that tangent. There's a lot of information stored in my head uh, based on things that I've been reading and listening to here. And I'm listening to a wide variety of opinions and takes. So some of them uh, often seem contradictory with others. And I'm not enough of an expert. I mean, I try to do as much verification as I can. Uh, but I'm not enough of an expert to sometimes go into all the numbers and to be able to tell who's telling the truth. So often, I will just present you the various perspectives that are out there, um, in order to sort of give you a sampling of what's being said, what's going on in the public, what's going on in the what's going on in the public discussion. Um, so sometimes it's a little, like I mentioned, like I was mentioning, for example, for this, carbon storage, all of it is terrible. Well, no, there are some good examples. Oh yeah, which ones? How does that work? And why were so to get that overall sort of lay of the land type thing uh, can be tricky, and to know who's actually telling you the truth and who's blowing sunshine up your butt. Uh, like I said, can be difficult, especially if you don't have all that information, and I don't. So I'm doing the best I can to try to navigate and understand the ins and outs of the intricacies here. Because up until I heard that other conversation about that project in Saskatchewan, pretty much everything I heard about carbon capture, utilization, and storage is that it's expensive and that it's unproven and doesn't yield the results that anyone would hope for. and I had never heard about these other styles of projects. Apparently, there's one or two, there's maybe two ways to do this, two different methods, and there's a method that is less effective and one that is more effective. And but the one that is more effective, I'm guessing, is not the one that is um, uh, that is the most prevalent at the moment, maybe, and therefore maybe that's why it doesn't get as much, doesn't get talked about as much in the mainstream press. Um, but if there are better ways of doing it, and that they're already in place and they're already proven, and all we have to do is choose that way, well, then that changes the equation in a very serious way. So, again, I'm not an expert enough on these subject matters to know, but better minds than mine, and those are minds that I rely on because I go and consult them, seem to indicate that there are not all carbon capture, utilization, and storage mechanisms are equal. And there are some that are significantly better than others. And if that's the route that we're going down, then there actually could be some potential uh, to this down the road, and particularly with regard to creating the whole IP part of it, to the intellectual property of being able to go big in carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and create technologies and processes and patents for that that can then be distributed around the world, and our ability to go around the world and train people and deliver that expertise, which would be another market for us and another economic product for us that could be very lucrative over the course of the long run. So all this to say that he has, to give some context to the conversations that are going on here with the Assembly of First Nations and the Prime Minister having gone there to address them. Um, Trying to decide whether or not I want to start with him or with Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak, who is the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations, because she had a couple of things to say beforehand as well, rather important. And she did speak prior to the Prime Minister. So, you know what? It might be a better idea for me to present some of the things that she had to say first. Um, and that way things will come in the order that they had happened over the course of the day. Um, One of the key parts of her speech uh, came when she started talking about things that have happened since the meeting of the previous year. So I'm going to put this on the screen for you. Again, this is National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak, addressing the nations that had showed up at this event to give a little bit of a progress update based on, well, not only to do that in this speech, but in this portion of the speech to give a progress update a little bit on things that have happened since the last meeting.
A lot has happened since when we last gathered in September on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. One thing to highlight before we start relates to the historic $23 billion settlement that we negotiated with Prime Minister Trudeau in 2023 on discrimination in the First Nations Child and Family Services Program Endurance Principle. In July, we announced approximately 4,000 claims have been received since we opened the application portal in March. And shortly after, we confirmed that the first payments had started to roll. So today we're announcing that over 88,000 claims are in, and more than $265 million has been distributed to claimants. We want to again thank our representative plaintiffs for their leadership. They inspire us each and every day to keep making sure this rollout keeps moving in a good way. This is a significant achievement, but we know that thousands more First Nations people are still eligible in these first two classes. And while no amount of money can ever make up for the harms, that this compensation, it's an important acknowledgement of the discrimination that they suffered. So please join me in thanking them and the Settlement Implementation Committee. We are grateful for your leadership. Thank you so very much. Many of them are in this room. Since September's assembly, we have been going nonstop, starting with the federal budget. The finance minister, for I think AFN's first time in history, will be here later this week on Thursday to answer questions. November's budget was the new government's first chance to build back some of the trust that was lost after the major projects Bill C-5 was rammed through Parliament in 20 days without consultation. Last month's budget was also an opportunity to demonstrate through deeds that First Nations voices matter to this new administration. I wish I was here to say that we accomplished that mission. Sadly, the 2025 federal budget represents a significant setback. To be fair, we do recognize some investments for housing. We welcome measures to expand the capacity of the First Nations Finance Authority, and we were pleased to confirm that the $47.8 billion we negotiated last year for long-term reform of the First Nations child and family child welfare system has been protected. And so we lift up Minister Galmasti for her support on these priorities and her leadership in protecting Indigenous services from a 15% cut. We fought hard for that, but it should not have been so difficult. When the best that we can say is that Indigenous services is only being cut by $2 to $3 billion, we know that there's a problem, especially when provincial transfers for health, for education, and social services have gone up by 5%. Sadly, instead of closing the gap between First Nations and Canadians, this budget makes things more difficult. November's budget was introduced on the first anniversary of the passing of one of our leaders, Justice Murray Sinclair. So I want to personally recognize his son, Nigan, for our recent discussion 2 weeks ago about his dad's teachings, and we lift up his families, his daughters. He's got strong daughters, and we feel his spirit here today. As a commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigating residential schools, Justice Sinclair famously said, "Education got us into this mess, and education will get us out." More than half of the Commission's calls to action were focused on education. To mark the 10th anniversary of the Commission's final report this month, December, we call on Canada to make generational budget investments in First Nations education, training, and languages, because Canada talked a lot about generational investments in the lead up to the budget. We agreed and suggest that the most effective way to secure the future success of First Nations children and our economy is to invest in education, because Canada's education system was used as a tool to try to erase our culture, take our language, and break our spirit. For the next generation, education must be a tool that empowers First Nations youth and uplifts our children. First Nations are the youngest demographic in this country, but half of our schools are overcrowded. 50% of First Nations' actual education needs remain unfunded. So what generational investments were included in the budget for First Nations education? That silence you hear is sounded like Canada's response.
So I'm gonna give a little cut right there in what National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak is stating, because that was a powerful moment right there when she asked that question, and there was nobody in the room that made a noise. She goes, "Yeah, sounds like Canada's response." So in that section, she gives a good update of what's happened since the last year, mentions also their assessment of the budget, mentions that while there were, gives credit for things that were preserved, but does mention that there is an overall indeed cut to funding, and that there will be obviously consequences for the communities as a result of that, but also mentions important things like, for example, funding for child welfare that seems to have been protected, and seems some engagements on that, on which there appears to have been follow through. that had been hoped for, which is positive. But all of that together, you're getting a sense of what it is that has been going on. She continues on, but I wanted to make a stop there specifically because that was a powerful moment before she transitions into the next little bit that she wants to talk about. It's only about another minute more, but it's a good addition to what it is that she has mentioned so far. So I will just bring this to you.
Education is one example. Closing the discriminatory First Nations infrastructure gap is another. First Nations policing, the First Nations Procurement Authority, states of emergency that chiefs called all over the country were all ignored in this budget. Yet the government still says, trust us. Canada's promise to introduce First Nations clean water legislation this year is another example. And I lift up many people in this room that worked really hard on that. During the election, the government promised to reintroduce a clean water bill as quickly as possible if they were elected. So this week, we join with chiefs from coast to coast in calling on this government to honor their commitment and reintroduce the First Nations Clean Water Act this month. There is still time. Besides that, the federal budget and the Clean Water Act, policing and justice issues have been a key focus since September's assembly. From program funding cuts and bail reform to hate crime legislation and the Indian Act, we have worked to make sure that First Nations voices are heard in Parliament on these important issues. And so we lift up the chiefs who have made presentations to members of Parliament and senators this fall. The center of this work is the important policy resolutions chiefs co-develop and vote on here in this room. With the calls for justice and the AFN Justice Strategy that we released in June, many of the Chiefs' resolutions promote positive change to our justice system. This means revitalizing First Nations laws and legal systems. It means reforming the Canadian criminal justice system, and it means prioritizing First Nations policing as an essential service in this country, just like it is everywhere else. So we join the chiefs in calling on the government to also introduce the First Nations policing legislation in this session of Parliament. As part of my duties over the summer, we were invited to visit prisoners at the Stony Mountain Penitentiary. And it was really difficult, but I'm glad that we went because we need to see how our people are treated there. The incarceration rates are so overwhelming, and we will be visiting a women's institution soon. But it was really tough to visit that jail. And I went right into Max, and everybody was scared that I was going into Max. And I said, I'm going to go and sit with our men that have been, through the systems that be, the oppression that's put upon them. And being in there I spent the day with them. I took them donuts because I would have took KFC chicken had I known, and I'm going to do that again. But my heart was with them, and I was going cell to cell, and the guards were freak that I would go in. I said, those are our people. And sadly, I looked around. It was unfortunately most of our people. It's and some of them, they have to do their time, but at the same time, the inhumane treatment that I'd seen was hurtful. And knowing that in previous governments, one of the prime ministers from the past, just took things away from them, basic things like air conditioner so that they could swelter in heat all summer. These are the conditions that, our people are facing being incarcerated. So I left from there, it was really heavy. And I'm thankful to Creator Above because he sent a couple of elders that invited me over and they were able to pray with me. They didn't know that I was having a hard day that day after that. But, remember that and keep them in prayer this holiday season. I know that they have a lot to learn as well, but those are our people.
All right, so there you go, kits and cubs. Just more about what it is that is going on in a community and what it is that National Chief has been seeing in the course of doing her work. There was a comment here I saw in the chat that just came by from Jillian here asking, what is the logic for this MOU only being between Alberta and Canada? I know it's their oil. Is it that simple? I think it's more, I don't know for sure because I'm not in the mind of Mark Carney and I'm not in the cabinet meetings around the table. But I would just assume that it is because Alberta has been um, the single most attention-seeking, attention-grabbing, confrontational entity in all of this type of agreement, that it was no, all of this type of situation or scenario, that it was probably the best idea for the government of Canada to see whether or not it was possible to have any type of entente with Alberta in any way, shape, or form for next steps forward. I think it also has, before wanting to do consultations with anybody else, because if you can't agree with Alberta on the most fundamental principles, then what's the point of starting the negotiations with anyone else? Alberta's just going to come in and upend them. It could also have something to do with the fact that since the government of Alberta has decided that it and not a private sector entity will become the proponent for the pipeline project with the Major Projects Office, and the legislation does not bar a province from being a proponent. Um, uh, Now, Alberta keeps on saying that they will be the proponent until such time as they actually find one, and that they will find one. They're just going to do the initial groundwork. But given that that's the case, then if you're going to be the proponent, then we need to discuss with you what are the basic minimum requirements that we expect out of a proponent, and then have you agree to them. So it could just be that. The MOU to me strikes me more as the government of Canada telling the government of Alberta, um, and basically not telling the government of Alberta, but telling a proponent, you want to bring this major project that will probably actually be a major project, a real one, if it actually gets on the list, because everything that's going through the Major Projects Office so far, you have to understand, has not yet been designated as a major project by the office. Uh, and maybe a lot of them will not be, but they will still get the help from the office, to go. The pipeline might be the first one that's actually a true major project of national importance, and actually a true new project to make it on the list. So there's that element here, um, that in this case, if you are going to, if a government is decide, if a subnational government is going to decide that they are going to be a proponent rather than a private sector, then the federal government needs to make it very clear that subnational governments will be treated like private sector proponents, and not get some special considerations because it is a government to government type negotiation. No, if you're going to be the proponent, this is what we expect of all proponents, whether the proponent be from the government, from the public sector, or the private sector. So it would seem to be that might be the reason for the decision at the moment. There's also word on the tweet that British Columbia was indeed invited to participate in these discussions, but decided not to at this particular moment. I have not gotten that. Has come from a source that would be considered credible and said it, outright on TV. For it to be seen. So if there was any cause for defamation, they would be subject to it. But I haven't heard it confirmed from any other source. It's just been one source. But it seems that is indeed the case, at least according to that source, that British Columbia had been invited. British Columbia decided not to participate at this stage. Could be political reasons for that, positional reasons for that. Also heard with regard to these negotiations, because I saw another comment when I had mentioned about Tim Hodgson making that comment about Zoom. And I think Kit Nona Carol said, I'm sorry, but the Zoom isn't a big deal for me. You do what you do to attend important meetings. Yes. The problem with the Zoom thing, however, is if there's more background, and again, this is I picked up yesterday, it would seem that the coastal nations of British Columbia had been in communication with the Energy Minister's office for 2 months, asking for him to meet with them. And he only got back to them last Wednesday saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in the area in 2 days. Let's meet," uh, which was not going to happen. 2 days' notice. Uh, yes, yes, I understand that you've been writing me for 2 months saying that you would be ready to host a meeting and that I haven't got back to you. And now, when I do, I give you 2 days to prepare for such a big meeting. And for you to make travel arrangements from where you are on the coast to where I am. That that's not that's not proper. That's not proper. And it's again, it's a repeat of the thing that happened with C5 uh, on the bill, on those big major projects bill, when they were doing the consultations afterwards. And the prime minister set the first meeting with First Nations in Gatineau. There was a lot, and people had to come from all across the country. There was a lot of people that got their notice of when and where the meeting was. Um, Really, really close to the meeting date. Some of the notices were sent to the wrong place. There were certain people that were not able to participate because it was so hastily organized. This cannot be the situation where the federal government wakes up one day and says, "Okay, yeah, we're ready to meet with you. We've got 3 hours in 3 days. Can you all 600 nations, organize yourselves to come and meet us where we are in 2 or 3 days, even though you've been asking for this meeting for months." That's not respectful in any way, shape, or form. This is a message again that Tim Hodgson, who again I know is supposed to be this big shot and that gets a lot of things done. It's gotten a lot of things done with Indigenous communities, but I'm just not. I'm just not seeing it. Giving members of another nation again, if you truly buy into the fact that these are other nations and that you're negotiating nation to nation, picking up a phone and calling another nation and saying, "Hey, can you get your ass down here in 3 days?" Might not be uh, the most respectful way to ask people or to invite people to come and participate in a process for something you want, especially if it's something that they've never asked for and have very strenuously opposed for several decades. Please make some time out of your busy life and your busy schedule to leave where you are to come to where I am to talk to me again about something that you have already told us many times over several decades was a non starter for you. That type of invitation would probably rub a lot of people the wrong way. so, um, y- there's always a little more to the story once you kind of find out what's been happening behind the scenes here. So yes, there was a bit of a lack of respect to the communities most affected by this decision when they got that invitation with just a couple of days' notice. All right. So now to the prime minister. Um, he went and he had a couple of things to say, and I'm going to bring some of them to you here. Some of these are more diplomatic. Some of them uh, are substantial. The prime minister actually did this thing again that he seems to do is go somewhere and make a speech, and there are some announceables thrown in there that maybe people did not see coming. I'm going to start with some of the more diplomatic things here. The prime minister, in this case, really early on in address, um, made a land acknowledgement, but did so in an interesting way, because Not only did he make the land acknowledgement, but took a couple of moments to indicate why is the land acknowledgement, which is a little bit of a twist. I haven't seen this yet from someone, particularly a leader of a nation, but this would have been a good moment to do this.
I want to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I want to And for those of you who might be watching elsewhere, I want to acknowledge why I acknowledge. This land acknowledgement honors First Nations as the first stewards of this land. It recognizes the painful history during which First Nations were displaced from their territories. And it also points to the possibility of reconciliation, the opportunity for renewal that comes from acknowledging and confronting our past.
So, very important comment by the Prime Minister. As you noticed, received applause for making the land acknowledgements. There's probably an element here of history in certain senses of a Prime Minister going to the AFN General Meeting and making a land acknowledgement in the presence of a primarily Indigenous room at a Indigenous event. I'm not sure if that's the first time this has happened. Not sure if Prime Minister Trudeau had done it, or maybe this is the first time that this particular Prime Minister does it. Although I would suspect that he would have done the same thing at the three meetings that he had with the groups over the course of the summer. But definitely it seems to be an important thing that the Prime Minister of Canada would make that land acknowledgement. But that additional bit about why it is that he acknowledges is a new thing for me. And like I said, particularly important and salient in this context. Now, the Prime Minister goes on to speak about his commitment to working with Indigenous communities. So let's, whoops, that was the wrong button. Not stop share screening, share screen. So, and we can listen to the Prime Minister's thoughts on this subject.
That said, I want to make clear that Canada's new government is committed to working directly with you to build stronger nation-to-nation relationships. For it's only by working together that we can build stronger, more prosperous First Nations communities and a stronger, more resilient Canada. In a more dangerous and divided world, Canada is choosing to build, from major national projects to local infrastructure, including in housing and water. And above all, we are choosing to build brighter futures for all our people across this great land. This mission of building is a positive endeavor. The question is not what we're against, but what we're for, what we want to build together. Because this approach must be informed by and can only move forward with First Nations. Il s'agit d'une approche qui nous...
All right. So, again, this approach can only move forward with First Nations. Something that he says out loud, but it's not put down that explicitly on paper. So, if we're talking about trust, you have to trust that the guy saying that this is what is written down on paper means, even though what is written down on paper could very legitimately and easily be interpreted as meaning not that. And the unwillingness to be explicitly clear or to reduce that ambiguity is where trust starts, is where you start planting some of those seeds of mistrust, or at least doubt. The Prime Minister then goes on to talk about how it is, in his estimation, Indigenous participation for these types of projects is not only crucial, but foundational.
First Nations leadership, prosperity, and opportunity must be foundational. And laying this foundation begins with engagement. And that's why this summer I held 3 summits to engage First Nations, Inuit, and Métis leadership about your priorities, about their priorities, to discuss opportunities for communities, for equity ownership, for resource management of major projects. Over 430 First Nations were represented at the first summit in Gatineau.
All right. So again, stating that these partnerships, Indigenous partnership, is foundational. Now we get into, so that's sort of the diplomatic niceties. We start getting a little bit more into the meat of things here when he goes back and talks a little bit about the requirements that he is setting up for himself and for his government with regard to negotiation and consultation, and how these projects can be beneficial. And I'm going to present this portion in 2 parts where he talks about the requirements. And this is stuff that you may have heard before, but now he's saying it to them in their own house at their own event. And then and I'll stop it there so that we can assess that. And then he continues on to give a specific example of how this is being manifested in the projects that have been approved to date by, not approved to date, but that have been approved to be sent to the major projects office for whatever it's going to be doing here in terms of next steps.
Now, nation building carries more than one meaning. Yes, projects that build our national economy, and through Indigenous equity and management that help build First Nations. And this is not an aspiration. This is not an idea. It is the law. Specifically, under the Build Canada Act, for a project to be in Canada's national interest, it must strengthen our country's autonomy, resilience, and security. It must contribute to clean growth and align with our climate change objectives. And it must, by law, advance the interests of Indigenous peoples. Thank you. So to move from legislation to action, we launched the Major Projects Office to coordinate the development and financing of potential nation-building projects. That office has held several regional engagements with rights holders to encourage meaningful partnership and involvement of First Nations. And to ensure that Indigenous participation is embedded throughout this process, we have created the Indigenous Advisory Council. But let me be absolutely clear. None of this engagement counts as consultation. That process of consultation only starts once projects are referred as possibilities possibilities to the Major Projects Office. Under the legislation, there must be consultation consistent with free, prior and informed consent before a project can be designated in Canada's national interest, and none have been so far. But even once one is designated, even once that happens, there must be additional consultations on the conditions necessary for that project to succeed. And these conditions, these issues would naturally include requirements for Indigenous ownership, Indigenous economic benefits, and environmental protections.
All right. So there, kids and cubs, you've heard the Prime Minister talk about some of the requirements and then put some various important caveats, making the distinction between engagement and consultation. So what is happening right now is engagement. It's not consultation. Consultation only happens once a project is actually approved. Prime Minister making it very clear that no project has yet been approved under the Major Projects Office to be designated as a major project. Also mentioning that consultation is not just one meeting, right? And then going into the fact that the consultation process specifically, whatever engagement happens prior to the proper consultation on a specific project, not just a process, happens, that this is embedded in the legislation and that this is absolutely required. So a lot of very important caveats being made here by the Prime Minister to the community, again, at their own event, in their own home, to them, face to face. So again, hopefully he means this and he is serious about this. And hopefully he is much more serious about this than he appeared to be to Elizabeth May when he did make some engagements with her. Now, to give an example of this, the Prime Minister is going to be speaking about one of the newest projects approved, which is the one for the conservation area specifically, that had been twinned with another project. I believe it was the North Coast Transmission Line project, and it had a specific conservation project announced as well within the midst of it. So I'm going to let the Prime Minister continue here and give his example.
Now let me illustrate that by giving a quick example of a strategy that Major Projects Office is currently evaluating. It's called the Northwest Critical Conservation Corridor. The corridor is in an area of northwest British Columbia that sits atop vast deposits of critical minerals and has the potential to connect the clean electricity grid of BC to the power grids of Yukon and Alberta, while creating a new conservation area the size of Greece. The proposed North Coast transmission line at the heart of this project has the potential to create $10 billion in new economic activity, while reducing emissions by up to 3 million tons annually. It would also enable the expansion of the Red Chris mine to be built in close, direct collaboration with the Tahltan Nation. That mine will increase Canada's annual copper production by over 15% and employ 1,500 workers during operations and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 70%. The North Coast transmission line would also enable the Ksi Lisims LNG, owned by the Niska Nation, which will become Canada's second largest and one of the world's lowest emission LNG operations. In the coming months, through consultations with First Nations and on the advice of the Major Projects Office, we'll determine whether to formally designate these projects as being in the national interest, and if so, following further consultations, set the relevant conditions for these projects to proceed.
So there you have it. And that project also probably fits in with Canada's 30-30 commitment to preserve 30% of our land mass and 30% of our, I believe it is, our waterfront or ocean waters for environmental conservation. The Prime Minister Justin Trudeau moved forward a lot on that during his term in terms of designating areas that would meet our commitment. And I would have a feeling that this conservation project would also fit in with that agreement and international commitment that we have taken on. So this would be a two birds with one stone type of arrangement here. The Prime Minister then goes on to mention the doubling of the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program to $10 billion, which is a program that would help Indigenous groups or entities or consortiums or individuals acquire ownership or partnership stakes in these projects to help them being able to finance them if needed. The Prime Minister then gets on to two of the most important issues on the agenda for First Nations. I believe National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak had mentioned them in her comments as well, and that has to do with pretty much everything related to and water. So let's see what it is that the Prime Minister has to say on these two specific topics.
Now, as we build our nations, we must build strong communities. Over $16 billion has been invested thus far in over 13,000 projects that support Indigenous community infrastructure. Infrastructure that's central to the strength of those communities. Many aspects of this, I would like to focus today on two areas: housing and water. We've just created a new agency, Build Canada Homes, which will partner with First Nations and other orders of government to supercharge housing construction, using new factory technologies that cut building times by 50%, reduce costs by 20%, and lower emissions by 20%. Build Canada Homes will directly engage with First Nations to build affordable housing with a focus on Indigenous-led solutions, financial support, and those innovative construction methods. It's our vision that Build Canada Homes will incorporate Indigenous housing providers' knowledge and their leadership in these housing projects. Par ailleurs, j'ai demandé à la ministre des Services autochtones de collaborer avec vous au cours de la prochaine année afin de trouver une meilleure façon de répondre à vos besoins en matière de logement, notamment dans les réserves.
Prime Minister then said in French there that he asked the Minister of Indigenous Services to work with them over the course of the next year in order to find better ways to respond to their needs on reserve, particularly when it comes to housing.
Il faut, entre autres, veiller à ce que le programme de logement de la SCHL, au titre de l'article 95, se fonde sur les données de dernier recensement afin de répondre efficacement aux besoins des communautés.
And he goes on to state that they need good data in order to be able to do that, data that's based on census data that we have collected in order to make proper decisions when it comes to these housing programs. So he wants these decisions to be evidence-based clearly here. All right, let's see what else he has to say here about the subject.
We want to build housing where First Nation families live. And to support the around 2/3 of First Nations peoples that live off reserve, we have committed $2.8 billion in Budget 2025 for off-reserve, urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing.
So again, here the Prime Minister making a point of ensuring that he is addressing needs on reserve and off reserve with regard to housing here in terms of the plans. We move forward to the Prime Minister, and this is probably the most important part of his speech, where he drops some announceables that we did not necessarily know were coming before he had made the speech. So let's see what he has committed the government to, and how this is received.
Building the homes we all need is one of the core missions of our government. That's why we're making a generational investment overall of $13 billion in housing through Build Canada Homes. And this is on top of the funding, $5 billion since 2016, invested directly in on-reserve housing. We're also moving forward with the essential work of building infrastructure on reserve, beginning with recognizing, as we all do, that clean water is foundational. Over the last decade, 85% of drinking water advisories on reserve have been lifted through investments of over $7 billion since 2016. Our government is committed to ending the remaining 38 advisories, and we've allocated in this budget an additional $2.3 billion for that purpose. Now, we recognize that we need a more permanent solution through a coordinated approach supported by the right funding mechanism and working with the provinces and territories at the table. This is a top priority for our government. And I'm pleased, the National Chief and I have discussed this, I'm pleased to announce that I will host early in the new year a joint federal, provincial, territorial First Ministers meeting with First Nations. And you will set the agenda. I'm sure that coordination and solutions on water will be one of the main items. I also can confirm that under the leadership of the Minister of Indigenous Services, this government intends to introduce water legislation in the spring of 2026. We will complete the crucial work as well, led by the Minister of Indigenous Services, to reform child and family services. This will help ensure the First Nations children grow up safe, secure, deeply connected to their families, their culture, their language. Our approach to child welfare will be First Nations-led, community-led, and it will be supported by significant additional funding. Now let me move towards a conclusion. That's a euphemism. I'm not quite ready to conclude, but I'm moving towards.
It's a little self-deprecating humor from the Prime Minister at the end here. But here some very important announceables by the Prime Minister here. Right, clean water and water legislation. It seems that there is a little bit of consternation with regard to that because the communities would just like the bill that had been introduced already to be reintroduced. It seems that there are going to be some changes to that bill and that maybe not everyone is on board with some of the changes that are going to be put in. They quite liked the version that had been tabled before and would be quite happy with that happening again. The announcement of the federal, provincial, and territorial meeting plus Indigenous, which was Premier Wab Kinu's suggestion at a meeting, past meeting of the federal, provincial, and territorial leaders, and that this is going forward, and that the Prime Minister again made it clear that not only will this meeting happen, but it will be the community that will set the agenda for it. Also, not only the clean water legislation, but a commitment to work on the remaining boil water advisories, child and family services reform that would be First Nations led and community led, that also has substantive new funding behind it in order to ensure that it works. So these are some pretty important announceables by the Prime Minister made at that meeting. As you can hear, some of them were more well received, and that they got a bit of an applause. The Prime Minister jumps from that immediately to talking about trust, which you know is a major issue. It's always addressed. And here, the Prime Minister, I guess, is making the case a little bit on why it is that he should be trusted. Again, in the context of what recently happened with Elizabeth May, however, in the backdrop. So maybe not the best time to be talking for himself about trust. But again, we will see what it is that the Prime Minister has to say with regard to it. I'm just going to check something here, kits and cubs, because I think I might not have a proper timestamp here. So I'm just going to verify this on my own. But no, it is indeed the proper timestamp. Everything is verified. So I'm just going to push it back a little bit. Prime Minister will make his self-deprecating joke again. And we'll go into what the Prime Minister has to say about trust. So just bring this back up on screen for you. And here.
Let me move towards a conclusion. That's a euphemism. I'm not quite ready to conclude, but I'm moving towards. Because I want to say a few words about a fundamental issue in relationships, which is trust. Because building together, you can only build together with trust. And I recognize that trust is never a given. It can only be earned, and it's earned through sustained action over time. Trust grows through partnership. Il faut donc collaborer de manière continue, dès le début et de façon transparente avec les dirigeants des Premières Nations à mesure que nous bâtissons des infrastructures d'envergure visant à transformer nos économies.
So the Prime Minister basically saying that trust and that transparency must be present from the beginning, from day one, when we're working on such things, especially major projects.
Trust is built by openness. I will always be straight about the challenges we face and the choices we must take together. And while our government has just undertaken a rigorous spending review in advance of the budget, we protected the essential programs of Indigenous Services Canada and the work of Crown Indigenous Relations. Core services such as healthcare, community safety, child and family services, education, and mental wellness, all of these will continue to progress. This builds on the over 400% increase in investments in Indigenous communities over the past decade. It also means that we recognize, that while outcomes have in many cases improved, there has not been as much progress as any of us would want, and certainly not enough progress, especially for the children who deserve it the most. So we will work together to better focus, appropriately scale and optimize these investments to maximize their impact. And that should mean more First Nations-led solutions, greater funding directly to rights holders, with better measurement of outcomes. And finally, trust requires listening, even when the truth is difficult to hear. Canada's new government is moving forward on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls for action. We are advancing the calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Nous mettons en œuvre la loi relative à la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones en partenariat avec les peuples autochtones. Now I just want to close with an image, one illustration of how central I see us making reconciliation to our government's mandate. One of the first things I did when I came into office was to borrow a painting in the National Gallery by a First Nations artist, and it's installed just outside the Cabinet Room in Parliament. It's called A Brief History of Northwest Coast Design by Luke Parnell, and it depicts a part of our history through 11 wooden panels with images inspired by the designs on bentwood boxes and feast bowls. The first few of these panels burst with vibrant colors. And then, with colonial contact, those colors fade, till the middle ones become smothered in white paint, a culture literally whitewashed. The final panels resemble the original glory, with images that, although marked by what has been endured, are renewed and resurgent. Le fondement de la justice, la réconciliation.
Okay, I'm not sure why the image disappeared here from the screen and is showing me instead. um, so sorry for that, kids and cubs. In the and now I got thrown by what the Prime Minister just said in French. But the first little passage in French that he had mentioned in that speech, I didn't stop it because it was only like 7 seconds, was also mentioning our commitment to UNDRIP as well. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And here you hear about the Prime Minister, again, signaling his commitment by mentioning here that painting that he keeps in the office. And here in French, in this section, he is talking about the possibility for reconciliation rests on truth, that truth is fundamental to justice, and that reconciliation is a task that must be experienced and practiced every day. It must be lived. You can't just talk to it, but you actually have to do it. So just like we say on this show, that democracy is something that you do, reconciliation is also something that you do. So very important here, note from the Prime Minister. And then the last little bit I have from his speech here is this last little section that I'm going to present to you to close it all off.
This painting is the last image ministers and I see before we enter the Cabinet Room to make some of the most important decisions for our country's future. And it's the first image we see when we leave, charged with the responsibility of implementing those decisions to create a better future. It's a reminder to us of the progress that's been made, the work that remains to achieve all that we can imagine and build together. Thank you very much for your attention. Merci beaucoup, and I look forward to your.
So there you go, kids and cubs. The Prime Minister addressing the Assembly of First Nations, and before that, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak presenting some of her thoughts about where we are currently at the moment and the progress that has been made since the meeting of the year previous, with an emphasis, of course, from the Prime Minister on trust and trying to impress upon the First Nations in attendance that um, even though he's not explicitly saying on paper, you have a right to veto and the free, prior, and informed consent, and not just free, prior, and informed consultation, but consent is a thing. And trying to show various ways that he intends to keep moving along the path of reconciliation. He mentioned as well some commitments to the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as well. And I believe the Commission on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and Two-Spirited People. So saying the right things, Wasim, the Prime Minister, was overall well received. People were open to what he was saying. There were certain times in the video, if you may have seen, where they were cutting to people in the audience listening, and you could see a couple of times some heads nodding yes in agreement, or things that the Prime Minister said resonating with people in attendance. So that's always positive. Um, of course, we'll see where we go from here, but there are some tangible commitments that the Prime Minister's made, creating a few expectations, and that way people can hold him to his word with regard to that. So, very important address at this particular time in relations with the community. And I think the Prime Minister acquitted himself relatively well. But then again, um, for these types of things, it's a proof is in the pudding type thing, and to see how these words translate into deeds and action, how they manifest themselves, and whether or not the spirit of reconciliation and that spirit of trust and spirit of partnership, full partnership, meaningful partnership, the Prime Minister is referring to, whether or not it manifests itself in reality. When you're actually in the room together and talking to each other face to face, and especially if you're have the opportunity to break bread together, which the Prime Minister really should do. I would highly recommend it. So yeah, major, like I said, this is a very important piece to these projects going forward, and this relationship with the Indigenous community that the Prime Minister says is a priority. Again, we're still at the initial stages. He hasn't been Prime Minister for a full year yet, and we'll have to see how that manifests itself. But we have been getting a little bit of mixed messages with regard to process. The Prime Minister really does not seem to buy into the concept that when it comes to determining what process we will follow, that there should be Indigenous people at the table there, that the consultation starts after that process has been determined. There are still a lot of people within the community who would like to be involved at that earlier stage. But I'm guessing there's a willingness to try it the other way. That seems to be the only option that's on the table anyway. So, I mean, why not give it a try? But I personally would like to see a little more involvement earlier on, so that we can stop having this first initial phase when there's an initial consultation or some initial engagement with someone that doesn't involve a member of another affected group or potentially affected group, that all of a sudden there's a specter of fear or suspected duplicity going on that hovers around all of the discussions and the progress. It would be just so easy to eliminate that noise by including them a little earlier on. But the Prime Minister does not seem to adopt this particular mode of operation. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you can't achieve the results without them. If the Prime Minister does what he says he's going to do, that there's engagement, that there's consultation, and consultation, meaningful consultation happens afterwards. And don't worry that that's going to happen. And there's follow through on that. And it is indeed meaningful. And there are decisions that are made that very clearly can be linked to moments in this consultation and in this engagement and participation in which something was said by Indigenous communities and therefore was taken and heard and absorbed and integrated, and they can see where and how it was integrated. Then there could be problems if that doesn't happen, right? So we're going to see over the coming months and years how it is that this commitment again manifests itself in real life. You know, how it walks, how it talks, what it eats, where it sleeps. So what it looks like in the real world. And again, so we're still in theory here. We're still not very much in practical application yet, and we're like I said, this talk needs to be turned into process and action that is respectful of all players and in which all players can not only see themselves participating, but see the fruits of their participation in real time, see how it is affecting the process and the outcomes. So if we're choosing optimism, rather than pessimism and rather than cynicism, if we're choosing optimism, there is a lot to be optimistic about. It seems that there's a lot of open terrain to start engaging in fruitful discussion. There's enough low-hanging fruit out there to discuss and agree upon and if it's agreed upon and followed up on, can add additional layers of trust, particularly in this initial phases. So it will be interesting to see how things progress. The Prime Minister keeps on saying the right things, but every now and then we get some decisions that leave us a little jarred as to like how does one reflect the other. How does having these engagement processes that exclude Indigenous people give us more assurance and confidence and trust that this is a process that will indeed be respectful um, and meaningful. Uh, right, that causes us to worry a little bit, but in terms of the words being used and how they are used and how they are consistently used, the Prime Minister seems to be giving an unwavering commitment to these principles. But there have been some moments of questioning with regard to how we are getting from point A to point B here along the way, and some of the questions are indeed legitimate. And again, if this is based on trust, the Prime Minister is entering this information, this relationship, asking for trust that he may not have earned yet. Right? So he's asking for some good faith, some not necessarily blind faith, um, but he is requesting an initial dose of trust that he has not earned. Um, uh, he's asked he's asking for people to be gracious enough to offer it to him at the beginning, promising that that it will be trust that is initial trust that is well placed. Not everybody is there yet. Not everybody is there yet, and it would be a little unreasonable to expect everyone to be there yet, considering the generations of learned mistrust. Um, but then again, trust has to start somewhere. If both sides do want to walk hand in hand along the path of reconciliation, um, they have to trust each other enough that if they both embark on the path, that they're not going to start fighting as soon as they get on the path, that they will actually start walking. um, so yeah, uh, very interesting developments here. As we mentioned, there again stuff with Elizabeth May putting it out there. I would show you the clip, but we are getting a little late in time today. The important part about what Elizabeth May was saying near the end, it's how would I put it? She's not going so far as to say that Prime Minister Carney lied to her or misled her. But she also, how would I put it? She also is questioning somewhat how much Prime Minister Carney values how much value he places in his own word, and how much of it, uh, yeah, basically what his word means to him. I'm going to present, it's near the end of the interview, so, and since we were talking about Indigenous issues, this part of the interview also deals with that a little bit. So I will present it, and you'll get to hear it from Elizabeth May herself here.
The federal government has the constitutional power, really, to push something like this through. Obviously, there has to be consultations. I take your point that has not really gone on to this point with BC or First Nations. No. But we've seen from the BC top court, reaffirmed by the Supreme Court, BC does not have a veto. And what the government has to do with First Nations is consult with them. There's nothing about a veto in the recent rulings on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. How far are you willing to go to try and stop this pipeline if they do decide to charge ahead despite some of the opposition?
I think there's something about integrity and believability. We're on a path to reconciliation. I thought we were in this country. So under Section 35 of the Constitution, yes, there's a requirement for consulting with rights holders. Earlier today, the Assembly of First Nations assembled, all of the First Nations assembled in the gathering in Ottawa, passed a unanimous resolution against the MOU with Alberta because of the threat to existing agreements, treaties, and ongoing work with the coastal British Columbia First Nations. But as I said before, also, Alberta First Nations were not consulted about how they feel about a nuclear industry and nuclear waste in their territories. There's also, of course, the fact that Canada committed ourselves to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is free, prior, and informed consent, none of which has occurred here. So, I mean, and in that studio, although it was David Cochrane in the chair, pretty famously now, Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, said, well, I'll consult with First Nations on Zoom. This is a rollback to a more colonial exploitative period that is really shocking to me when I think of all the work that needs to be done to show respect and work towards reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. You just don't wave that away. And I guess this current government thinks you can wave it away and pretend it's not important. I think it's important to many Canadians that we live up to our word as a country and respect treaty rights and the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples across Canada.
I will say the Prime Minister did assure the AFN today that there will be consultation on that, but I take your point. It does seem like
How
that.
do you make it? All right, JP, you can't make it prior.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't
the next
prior
national project. The Major Projects Office could be working on a time machine, and perhaps that will make it possible to have prior informed consent to something they've already announced.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much. Green Party leader Elizabeth May, always nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. So that portion there was specifically about whether or not the Prime Minister could be trusted with regard to his commitments to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. And in this particular instance, I would say First Nations communities, strictly because he was addressing here. But yes, I thought that the end of the interview had the quote a little bit about Mark Carney and whether or not the value of his word. But I guess that was a little earlier in the interview. But here we go. I think I have it here for you here, Kits and Cubs, in this particular quote here. There we go. So I'll present it to you here. It's JP Tasker asking Elizabeth May whether betrayed by the Prime Minister.
Misled you then? Do you feel betrayed by him?
I feel betrayed by the reversal on a key promise that was made. And I know that in public interviews, Stephen Guilbeault has said that he also was asking the Prime Minister, how, he asked himself, how do I look at myself in the mirror, as he said on Tout le monde en parle. But the other question, of course, being that how could this be that a government would tell an opposition party leader, in order to get my vote, it's in the budget, and it was in black and white in the budget, and then reverse that within 10 days. So that was shocking. I don't know if the Prime Minister deliberately misled me, but what I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that the Prime Minister's word doesn't mean much to him. And that is a surprise, because I not to go on too long, JP, but I'd inferred from the Prime Minister's reluctance to say on the record that he supported the Paris Agreement and supported our targets in previous interviews. That meant that if he did say he supported it, he'd be honor bound to deliver on that. That's why I thought he was evasive in the past, saying, I believe in results, not objectives.
Yeah.
So I didn't think that the Prime Minister's word meant so little to him. And it's the kind of shock that means I know I can't again think, oh, well, I can trust this government. I can trust this Prime Minister to keep his word. No, I can't. So I won't be voting confidence in the government again.
There you go, Kits and Cubs. Elizabeth May, not willing to say that the Prime Minister lied to her or misled her, but definitely willing to say that she has the impression that the Prime Minister, the value of the Prime Minister's word does not mean much to him. Ouch. All right, Kits and Cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. And if you can, share a little bit of yourself. Why does our content resonated with you? Because that is advertisement that we cannot buy, and it means the world to us. Now, Kits and Cubs, if you would like us to help you because you're a busy beaver on the go, busy cub on the go, and you would like to stay informed, but you also need to take on the day and take on the world, well, thanks to the Ray Girl, we can help you, Kits and Cubs. All you have to do is scan this QR code, and that will bring you to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated's pod page. So, and if you're listening, you go to podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click on subscribe, when we have something fresh off the podcast bandwidth, it comes directly to you. Thank you so much for supporting us there. Now, if you would like to support us in other ways, Kits and Cubs, travel on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, and there, with the approval of Kits, Cassie, and Elaine, click on our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little tickle. It makes us giggle. It also helps us with the algorithm. So we thank you for your support. And if you would like to support us financially, because we do incur some costs to bring the show to you, and you would like to make a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund because you too believe in fighting the scourge that is dry beaver. Keep your beaver happy. Keep your beaver moist. A little contribution to our tip jar makes us extremely happy, especially when we hear the sounds of those loonies and toonies hitting the bottom of the jar. Such a melodious sound. So thank you very much for that. And if you happen to be buying Canadian kits and cubs, truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com is our email address. And that will bring you to excuse me, that will allow you to do a direct bank to bank transfer, which means that there is no service fee that goes to the US oil and not oil, US information, data, and AI oligarchs, the broligarchy down there. And that cut that would normally go to them would come to us, which means we get 100% of your donation, which means it goes further. And we thank you for all of your support. And if you are donating through the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, I don't believe I gave the address, but that's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. That's where you can do that. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, we have the super chat and the memberships, and we thank you for all the ways in which you show us support and love. It means the world to us, because without you and without your contributions, we wouldn't be able to do this show. And so we appreciate very much all of your assistance. It's because of you that we have been on for 5 years, and or that we're in our 5th season, I should say. We will be on for 5 years when we finish our 5th season. And we absolutely do rely on your assistance, and we are grateful for it. Now, kits and cubs, if you're not able to contribute financially, please do not worry, because the gifts of your participation and attention are the ones that matter to us. And we love to hear from you. So truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com is also where you can send us your thoughts about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Let us know what you think, and suggestions for guests for future episodes. We love to hear from you, so please do write. We always get a little warm fuzzy when you see one of your names pop up in our inbox. And it's like, ooh, it's like we get little presents. So we like that. Thank you so much for taking the time. And also, kits and cubs, if you want to reach us on our socials, at True Eager, at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, which is our original home. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, right down here in the comments section, leave us something. We read absolutely everything, even though we're not necessarily able to get back to everyone. And we also have the Damn Fam Discord and the Damn Fam Instagram, which are community-led initiatives. And we thank you so much for having them kickstarted. And if you want to keep the conversation going, definitely visit the Damn Fam Discord. And there's some wonderful people there, and wonderful discussion, and everything under the sun is being discussed there. So have some fun and go check it out. And hopefully somebody will put the Discord link in the chat. Kits and cubs, because democracy is something that you do remember, we have House of Commons petition number E6821 to encourage our elected officials to introduce some legislation that would make it such that foreign ownership laws as it pertains to our media would be changed so that Canadian media should be by Canadians for Canadians, and delivering news that's in the best interest of Canadians. We have 7,152 signatures so far, and we need many more. So if you are able to add yours, we would thank you very much for that help. Also, kits and cubs, if you happen to be living on Prince Edward Island, there is a by-election coming up in 5 days, voting day, December 8th, for the by-election in District 2, Georgetown Ponal, a race in which the leader of the PEI Liberal Party, Robert Mitchell, is running, and he's attempting to secure his seat in the legislature. There is one more day of early voting, and that will be December 5th. So in 2 days from now, voting will be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then there will be voting day on the 8th. So please tell your friends about that and make sure that you make your plan to vote, because friends do not allow friends to do democracy alone. They just don't. And after you've done your civic duty, why not make a social event out of it? Go with your friends, make sure you vote, and then go out and have a piece of cake or a little bit of ice cream, or have a little nosh together, or maybe check out a movie or something. Just have some social time. You know, it doesn't all have to be about the duty. You can add a little fun to the job. All right, kids and cubs. Let's see. Words of wisdom. Well, kids and cubs, I am going to, for words of wisdom, I am going to suggest today taking a moment when you need to, if things get a little stressful, to center, to just come back to center. Close your eyes for a couple moments, take a couple of deep breaths, maybe do some exercises where you tense parts of your body and then relax them or something. Um, but yeah, if things get a little too much, always remember that there is value to coming back to center. A couple of deep breaths. Um, you know, it's okay to have going through your mind, oh, good Lord, give me patience. Ah, it's okay to ask the universe for patience every now and then, or for strength, or for courage, or for whatever you need to get through a trying period. But yes, always remember that you have the option to come back to center and pull yourself back in so that you have time to respond to situations with calm and in a manner that uh, in which you will honor yourself and rather than a manner in which you will go back home and think, oh my God, did I do this? Was I wrong? Did I go over the top? Did I do something, inappropriate? Um, because when you have the opportunity to react to crazy making situations or just destabilizing situations or deregulating situations from a position of calm, odds are you will probably be able to get through it with minimal disruption to yourself and minimal mess to have to clean up later. And that's always a good thing. All right, kids and cubs, could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now it's time for the audience participation part of our program, where I get to ask you, kids and cubs, to say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock in 1, 2, and 3. Oh, kids and cubs, I hear you. Oh, and there was some power to that request. Shook the rooms here at the Beaver Lodge. Shook the walls. Hmm. Here we go. I must oblige. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud. And this is courtesy of Kit Linda, who has sent us this. And very happy to report because we get to focus on a bit of a different group. Often we focus on athletes and sometimes on artists. But we also have other people that make us proud. And this is from the world of social sciences and humanities. It seems that the Social Societies and Humanities Research Council of Canada announced recently its 2025 Impact Awards. These awards are the SSHRC's highest honors, recognizing outstanding Canadian researchers and their achievements, which includes research, training, knowledge mobilization, and outreach activities funded partially or entirely by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. The awards also underscore the SSHRC's dedication to supporting research that inspires change and enriches our understanding and informs policy making. There are 5 winners that receive a combined total of $300,000 to continue their groundbreaking work. So, congratulations to Miriam Denov from McGill University, who receives the gold medal for her unparalleled research on the effects of war on children. Through her work, she's advancing our understanding of gender, violence, trauma, mental health, and the intergenerational impacts war has on families. She has been a leading and influential voice for ensuring practitioners, governments, and the United Nations better understand, respond to, and prevent the gross human rights violations of children in war. The gold medal is the SSHRC's highest research honor and is awarded to an individual whose sustained leadership, dedication, and original thinking have advanced knowledge and informed policies and programs internationally. Congratulations also to Joshua Steckley from Carleton University, who receives the Talent Award for his research on environmental politics and rural development. His work explores the complex relationship between biotechnology and the labor market, exposing the ethical tensions in industries aiming to profit from engineering new life. The Talent Award recognizes the outstanding academic achievement of an SSHRC doctoral scholarship or fellowship holder or postdoctoral fellowship holder. Also, congratulations to Kamari Maxine Clark from the University of Toronto, who receives the Insight Award for her groundbreaking ethnographic work in Africa. Her research showcases the strengths and challenges of using big data and digital tools in human rights law and advocacy. The Insight Award honors an individual or team whose project has made significant contributions to the knowledge and understanding of people, societies, and the world. More congratulations to Tara McGee from the University of Alberta and Amy Cardinal Christensen from the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, who both received the Connection Award. Together, they co-lead the First Nations Wildfire Evacuation Partnership, producing accessible research and recommendations on wildfire evacuations as well as mitigation for communities and agencies. The Connection Award recognizes initiatives that foster research knowledge exchange to generate intellectual, cultural, social, or economic impacts. And finally, congratulations to Jason Edward Lewis from Concordia University, who receives the Partnership Award for his leadership as primary investigator and director of the Initiative for Indigenous Futures, or the IIF, a partnership between scholars, creators, technologists, and policymakers who are working to envision Indigenous futures and guide societal progress. The Partnership Award recognizes a formal partnership which, through mutual cooperation and shared intellectual leadership and resources, has demonstrated impacts and influence within or beyond the social sciences and humanities research community. And Ted Hewitt, who is the president of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, is quoted as saying, "This year's Impact Award winners have demonstrated extraordinary dedication and innovation within their fields of social sciences and humanities inquiry. Their research has not only advanced academic understanding, but has also had a direct positive influence on community practices and public policy in Canada and abroad. SSHRC is proud to recognize their outstanding achievements and the profound impact they have on society." There you go, kits and cubs. Very important to also give praise to our scientists and researchers. And today we have, so thank you to Kit Linda for that suggestion of Canadians who make us proud to highlight. And with that, kits and cubs, I am off. And I will see you tomorrow. Watch for Mr. Grizzly again this afternoon, later on. See if he's got another Grizzly Growl for us today. And make sure that you check out the one he has had from yesterday. Very, very important. He was doing a 2-part story on potential medical fraud. So it's some cubs. I will have it here, putting a link in the chat for you so that you can go and check out part 2. And if you haven't checked part 1 out yet, do that. Watch them in order. All right, kids and cubs. I am gone. Amore bisous. And we will see you tomorrow. I do not suspect that tomorrow I will, unless I have like a major problem sleeping, that I will start late. Tomorrow, I think I should be able to start at our usual time, given I have no major evening commitments today. So with that, I am gone, and I will see you tomorrow. I very much look forward to it. And until then, I will miss you.